Welcome back. Everything and Nothing at All is a powerful new collection of essays that explores identity, belonging, and the complexities of race and adoption.
In her latest work, our next guest takes us on an intimate journey as she reflects on her experiences as a Korean-born transracial adoptee raised in Canada. Please welcome best-selling author Jenny Heijun Wills. Welcome. Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about your first essay touches on a common phrase used in adoptive communities, and it is coming out of the fog. Can you talk about how that expression, what that expression means and how it relates to your experience?
Sure. So we often hear this phrase coming out of the fog to suggest that before we sort of start to think about adoption as possibly an industry, as possibly not the savior narrative that we're comfortably packaged in other avenues, then we're sort of in the fog, I guess, so to speak. And then the idea is once you become aware of some of those things, you're moved out of the fog. The way I'm thinking about it, though, in this book is that it's not this kind of start and end direction, that there's just different fog, different sort of places of possible confusion.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, throughout our whole lives.
Absolutely.
You also talk about the typical adoption story, how it paints this sort of reunion as the climax of the adoptee's life. But you want to change that narrative. How come?
So when I wrote my first book, which was a memoir called Older Sister, Not Necessarily Related, I thought, you know, a lot of these adoption memoirs talk about childhood and some of the racial discomforts and then move towards reunion with first family and or biological family. I figured, you know, there's so much messiness that can happen afterwards, especially when there's cultural fracture or disconnect. And I wanted to do that. I was thinking a lot about Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, and everyone reads like 1,000 pages leading up to this marriage between Darcy and Elizabeth, and then it's like the end. But it's like, you know, it's not going to be normal after that.
That's so true. You also use the term first family instead of biological family. Why do you prefer first family?
Well, I don't know if I necessarily prefer it. It's the term that I've landed on for now, and I think in adoption circles, people tend towards that if they want to think about their original kin as more than just genetic donors, I guess, or genetic individuals in their life. And so for me, my first family is more meaningful than that. And so that's how I turn that.
Love that.
You have an essay called Rainbows, and in it you really reflect on your relationship with your sexuality. And it's a really powerful way of looking at it. You say that you identify as polyamorous, and you say that it was the greatest gift of adoption and reunion gave you. Explain that, explore that.
It's a really interesting essay, I think, now that I think of it after I've written it. I wasn't so thoughtful while I was writing it, I don't think, but in the meantime, it's come to my sort of observation that I'm thinking about the different ways that we think about rainbow families. So through transracial adoption in quite, as the essay unpacks, curious and problematic ways, but also through queer kinship. And I think what transnational adoption has offered me is at least an innovative and hopefully complicated and critical way of thinking about love, the people that we love, and the people that we understand as characters in our lives.
I think we all remember the global reaction when Rachel Dolezal's story came out. She now goes by Nkechi Diallo. You talk about the impact that her appropriation of the term transracial had on queer communities. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, it had an interesting impact on adopted communities and queer communities sort of together. And so originally we kind of anticipated that it would be an issue because Diallo sort of used transracial adoption as an alibi for her racial masquerade, her ethnic fraud, because she had been raised in a family with Black transracially adopted siblings. Predictably, I think some people very disingenuously tried to make the false equivalency between transgender individuals and what she was calling her transracial, AKA racial masquerade experience, as a way to, I think, discredit gender-affirming experiences. And then I guess, secondly predictable outcome was that communities of color came out saying there's no such thing as transracial.
Right.
Right? For adopted individuals who've been using this term, transracially adopted individuals who've been using this term for a long time, this was quite isolating and erasing and confusing to us. And so it sort of kicked us out once again from our communities of origin.
Nicely explained, because that was a complicated thing
I felt it was a very structured question.
You must be a writer. Oh my gosh.
You, in the essay Pretty, you explore this idea of beauty and how societal expectations can shape that, particularly when you add in the element of culture. You have this Korean side of ideas around beauty, and then also the Canadian culture. How did you navigate feeling othered by both sides?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm navigating it well, but what I've come up with is not necessarily trying to fit into one or the other, or probably there are other additional layers here, but trying to understand these aspects, being adopted, being a Korean Canadian individual, being a Canadian person raised in a white context, as inextricable, and trying to build some sort of identity out of that instead of finding myself at a loss, searching for something that won't necessarily ever accept me.
So, sorry, I'm enchanted. I just
Mesmerized.
totally. How were the way that you were raised shape your view now on transracial and transnational adoption? It's a topic that's like in the media right now, currently. What are your thoughts around that?
Absolutely. So I'm not sure if I thought too much about being transracially or transnationally adopted in my youth. I studied this when I went to school and graduate school. I think what is most palpable to me is that I grew up in relatively isolated racial contexts. And so now in my adult life, in all of the things that I do, it's in support and love and celebration of communities of color, my own community, but also adjacent communities.
Jenny, you are a delightful and very interesting human being. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for
and
having
sharing
me.
your story.
Thank you for
Truly
having
appreciate
me.
it. Now, everything and nothing at all is available now. And studio audience, you're all going home with your very own copy. Hey, you, come a bit closer. We've got so many more must-see interviews, spicy debates, lifestyle tips, and pop culture moments. So subscribe to our channel by tapping the logo below and don't miss out.